Good morning. It's Wednesdays. It's Wednesday. I'm Wayne. Welcome to Wednesdays with Wayne. Lynn and I are in Vail, so we're happy to talk to you now from the city of Vail. Beautiful place in the mountains. If you haven't been, consider going. It's really quite fabulous. We've been talking about, before we get started, once again, I want to thank you for your time. I have a lot to cover today. We've been studying cosmography by Bucky Fuller. So I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for showing up. I'll do my best as always to make sure your time is well spent. Today is going to be a sprint because I have a lot to cover. And I'm doing my best to tie what Bucky wrote 7 years ago to today's events. And as we know in a quick recap, what we learned, what we talked about or learned so far, there's no such thing as a normal. We've learned, or what Bucky has written, and what I think we can probably, majority can agree to. The world is designed to change. It's been doing that for millions of years. It's going to continue to do that for millions of years more. The question is, will humans be on Earth in the years to come, or are we going to annihilate each other in the name of God, or because we think there's a fundamental thought of scarcity or not enough to support human life for all of us? Therefore, are we living in a you or me world or a you and me world? And there are some that would have us believe it's you or me. And it's time, as Bucky would say, humans may be in their final examination. And the question is, will we use our minds to think courageously, to think faithfully, to look at things the way they are, not as others would perceive them or want us to perceive them to be? Your traditional human power structures, are they threatened by the fact that we may get together and cooperate? So I'm going to start again with the first sentence of the book that Bucky wrote. This was found on his desk after he died. And this is the beginning of this book, and this is why I'm covering it. The Dark Ages still reign over all humanity, and the depth and persistence of this domination are only now becoming clear. So I'm going into this final part, and this is what we've learned. So, is it you or me, or you and me? The other thing we learned that there is such a thing as leverage, or what we call it ephemeralization, the ability with, especially nowadays, technology to do more with less to the point we do almost everything with almost nothing, which destroys the myth of scarcity. We live in a world of abundance. If you think there's not enough to go around, it's just because of the thought you have in your head. Scarcity only exists in the minds of humans who are ignorant and misinformed and choose to stay that way. We do not live in a world of scarcity. There is plenty for everyone. So why does the United States government pay its farmers to grow less food, to prop the price up while millions of people die of starvation every year? So what do we know? We know we live in a world in abundance. It's been proven technologically. So we actually do live in a you and me world, but not in its present form with its present power structures. What else have we learned? We learned there's no such thing as a straight line. There are no straight lines in the universe. The only straight lines you see are the ones that humans put there. The universe consists only of waves. There's no such thing as a solid. There are some molecules more densely packed in some form than others. Rocks are densely packed molecules. Wood is densely packed molecules. It's all just densely packed molecules, but there's no true such thing as a solid. We've also learned we live in a 4-dimensional world, not a 3-dimensional world, as we demonstrated last week when we built the tetrahedron. And we also learned a thing called synergy, which is a behavior of whole systems, unpredictable by the behavior of the parts considered individually. And we proved last week, if we take 3 triangles and put them together, which is a minimum structure in universe, we put them together and we form a tetrahedron, which is 4-dimensional. And we prove that 1 + 1 + 1 can equal 4. What we also know is most of what we've been taught by our traditional public education systems, they were designed to teach us to become employees, to be good and do as we're told, and make good grades, and don't make mistakes, and don't rock the boat. That these public education systems, most of what we now know and what we're being taught and still teaching is wrong. This is what we know. We also know that there's only one race of humans. So anybody that calls you a racist is racist. And the reason they're racist is because they don't understand there aren't different races. There's only one race. So the person that calls you a racist is either ignorant or pretending to be, or they don't want us to know what they know, which is not, don't let us cooperate and work together because it will threaten them. So I'm up here visiting Vail. It's beautiful outside. Beautiful mountains, beautiful trees, and I'm noticing something Becky said about these trees. And the trees, sure enough, are birch and aspen. They have very light bark on them. And the further north you go, the lighter the bark gets, the lighter the trees get. The further south you go, the darker the wood and the bark of the tree gets, till you get to the equator where you have the dark hardwoods, the mahoganies, like this. Humans are the same way, and the reason why is because vitamin D is the only vitamin you can overdose on. If you get too much of it, it could kill you. So the body creates melatonin to keep the sun's rays from the human from overdosing on the sun's rays, from overdosing on vitamin D. You get some from some foods, couple, but it's trace elements. Most of vitamin D comes from the sun. So the further north you go, the lighter skinned the people are. And the further south you go, the darker skinned the humans are. And the humans are darker because it produces melatonin in the skin to prevent the absorption of vitamin D to prevent overdose. There's only one race. So I'll go into this last part of this. And if you're following along on page 248, I'm going to do my best to get through this in this next hour we have together. So thank you for your time. Thank you for showing up, and thank you for listening with an open mind. I think the worst thing that we can do, especially in this age, in this day and age, is to think that we're right. I think it's time. I'm questioning everything I've ever been told, everything I've ever been taught, and everything I think I know is for sure real and true. Because everything is changing. The world is designed to change, and people are designed to change. And we're in a huge change. We're in a global paradigm shift. And the future is not an extension of the present. We're going into a whole new era right now. The whole globe is changing. I mean, why are we still talking about sending our kids back to school? We don't need to send them back to school to learn. We have the ability to teach ourselves and to learn on our own. We don't need to go back to school and sit in a room and be talked to. It's so antiquated and obsolete and outdated. So I can't believe we're even having these conversations. So I'll go into it right now, and you can think what you think, and you're entitled to your own opinion. And I think the best thing we can do is have the courage to think and to talk and to speak the truth and not be terrorized or intimidated or anything because we speak the truth. This is what Bucky was saying. The humans have a mind. That's what separates humans from animals. Animals have brains, humans have brains and minds. And the minds are able to distinguish one from another, to discover interrelationships, to solve problems. And the reward for solving a problem is a bigger problem because you prove you could do it. And that's what humans are here to do. And we solve millions of problems by making trillions of mistakes because we're born to learn via trial and error. It's the way humans learn. Humans have discovered everything they know through trial and error, but still punished in public education systems and at some jobs and by some parents. So I'll go into this. Like it says, the many and seemingly unrelated topics we have reviewed are intimately interrelevant and seem to be operating synergetically. At the very moment humanity has arrived at that evolutionary point where we do have the option for everyone to make it, I find it startling to discover that all the great governments the 5 great religions, and most of big business would find it absolutely devastating to their continuance to have humanity become a physical, metabolic, economic success. All the political, religious, and money-making institutions' power is built upon those institutions' expertise in ministering to and ameliorating the suffering, want, pain, and fears resulting upon the misassumption of fundamental inadequacy of life support on our planet and the consequent misfortune of the majority of humans. So what he's saying here, as most people believe, there is inadequate life support. They still believe this fundamental thought from Thomas Malthus from hundreds of years ago that the resources are growing arithmetically and the population is growing exponentially and there's not enough to support us all. So Darwin comes in and says that survival of the fittest, you or me. And then Marx comes in and says the elite should not be rewarded. It should be the workers who should be rewarded. Created communism. And then another person speaks up and says, I think it should be the people who provide the jobs should have what they keep. It should not be from each according to their means, to each according to their needs. It should be whoever creates is rewarded for their creativity, problem-solving ability. And capitalism was born. And these two entities have been fighting each other for hundreds of years, all based on the fundamental thought that there's not enough for all. He says, some religious bodies battle politically and morally against abortion, which inherently eliminates the most lucrative reason to exist. Humans and more humans and their common adversity and suffering and their need for ministry. How did it become? The educational system was organized to counter this innate proclivity and capability. The institutionalized catering to want and suffering gives us a sense of the almost certain fatal dilemma we are in. Another relevant threat to human continuance in universe is our world education system's deliberate cultivation of specialization, despite the fact that each individual human is born physically and metaphysically equipped to function as a natural comprehensivist. So what he's saying here is that education systems teach specialization, but specialization leads to extinction. Surely if nature had wished humans to be specialists, she would have given us the special equipment for doing so, as she has given to all other creatures. But she hasn't. We observe, then he goes on to talk about wild horses led by king stallions. And the stallions, the biggest and most powerful, are the ones that lead the herd. And they inseminate the rest of the herd. This is what Darwin cites as an example of nature's way of arranging to keep the strongest strains going. And same thing happened in humans. Among the earliest human beings occupying our planet, once in a while was born a much bigger man than the other. He did not ask to be big. He just found himself to be born so. He found himself continually asked for favors. So somebody would say, hey, I can't reach those bananas. Can you get them for me? And he would do that. And those people over there have lost all their bananas and they're dying of starvation. They're going to come take our bananas. Can you protect us? So the big man found his bigness being continually exploited. He said, okay, well, you've got me out here fighting for you all the time. I need you to help me get ready for the next battle. So I need weapons and walls. So the people said, okay, we'll make you king and you tell us what to do. So the guy gladly did. Another stranger came along and said, Mr. King, you have the nice soft job here. I'm going to take it away from you, and the two fought. The king licked the stranger and he was going to kill him. But he had him on the ground and he said, you were going to kill me and take my kingdom, weren't you? But I could kill you right now, but I'm not going to. You're a good fighter. I need good fighters. So if you promise to fight for me, I'll release you. So the stranger said, okay. And the king found himself to be an institution, the original power structure. The king then said to himself, don't let these. Then another man came at the king, and the king beat him too. And he said, I need more fighters, so I'm going to let you fight for me too. And so that stranger acquiesced. So the king said, I can't let these two big men come with me at the same time. I can handle one of them, but not two of them. So from there, gradually entered this number one grand strategy that is now being used by all power structures across the globe. Divide to conquer, and to keep conquered, keep divided. It's happening today. Why are we divided? I don't know. I meet strangers. They don't have any angst toward me. I have no angst toward them. I don't care what race you are, what color your skin is, what level of income you have, where you live, what you drive, I don't care. When I meet somebody, typically, like 99.9% of the time, there's a nod, there's an acknowledgement, there's a how you doing. We don't look at each other's skin colors or religious backgrounds or any of that. Normal human beings get along famously. So how come we don't get along? We're predisposed to perform, to engage each other and to respond favorably toward one another. So what's with all the news and all the talk and all the division? That's what Bucky was saying about it. This was 37 years ago. To divide, conquer, to keep conquered, keep them divided. So the king says, I want more big men, so I'll make one the Duke of Hill A and the other the Duke of Hill B, and I'll keep my spies watching them so they don't gang up on me. Then a whole lot of people started making money for the king. And he has some very bright people around him, but they refused to do what he wanted to do. So he said to one of them, look, if you don't shape up, I'm going to cut your head off. The guy says, you're a nuisance. And the troublemaker said to the king, you're making a mistake because I understand the language of the enemy over the hill. And if you let me go, I go listen to them, and I'll tell you what they're going to do and when they're going to do it. So the king said, okay, you have a great idea. Let me know every day. And by the way, I'm going to make sure you eat regularly, have a nice place to live. So you come up in the castle and eat with me. And here's your purple and gold outfit. And you sit over there and you listen to the enemy and you tell me if anything's going on. So he did. Then he asked somebody else. And he found another physically small character. But he made great swords. So he brought him into the kingdom. And he said, you're my head armorer. So you make the swords and you make the shields and you live in the castle with me. You eat regularly, you have a nice place to live, and you wear purple and gold too. So the king surrounded himself with the specialists. And one day somebody came to him and said, King, the reason I'm able to steal from you is because I understand arithmetic. Now, if I do arithmetic here in the castle, people won't be able to steal from you. So the king brought all his experts in. And he said to each one of them, you mind your business, and you mind your business, and you mind your business, and I'm going to mind everybody's business. And he had great success. And years and years and years went by. And the king enjoyed great success being a comprehensivist with all his specialists working for him. And then one day he went to each of his experts and he said, you're starting to get a little long in the tooth there, Pods. You're getting old, I'm getting old. And what I want you to do is teach somebody what you know about mathematics. And you teach somebody what you know about language. And you teach somebody what you know about sword making and metallurgy. And he got each of these specialists to start teaching others each of their skills. And the first educational category, scheming, was born, which manifests itself in the organization of Oxford University and all the other educational institutions. So he says, in spite of all humans' innate interest in the interrelatedness of all experience, long ago, these world power structure builders learned to shunt all the bright intellectuals and physically creative into specialist careers. The powerful reserve for themselves the far easier. All one needs to know to discover now is how self-perpetuating this disease of specialization is. To witness the interdepartmental battling for educational funds and the jealous guarding of various specializations assigned to department salaried experts on each subject in any university. The fight over funds will tell you how deeply ingrained this area of teaching specialization still is in our educational institutions. He says in the early 1950s, he was attending this American Association for the Advancement of Science, Congress of Philadelphia. He said he found two papers that represented different parts of the symposium. One was the anthropology, the other was biology. Both had papers determined extinction to be the consequence of over-specialization. Specialization leads to extinction. Nice time to empty the trash. I've got the door open because it's so pleasant here. And for Austin, where I come from, it's 103 or 5, and it's 57 right now. So I had the windows open. Sorry about the noise. I apologize. How might this be? He says, we know that inbreeding ever faster running horses makes two very faster running horses. You keep breeding them and inbreeding them and inbreeding them, but you outbreed general adaptability. So he says what happens is humans mastered highly bred racing horses, but they eventually don't have the ability to cope with unusual environmental situations. So as long as everything remains normal, everything's fine. But if something changes in the environment, the specialist is not able to adapt. So he says quantum mechanics is the answer, as it's a generalized operating principle. So he says that the energy of universe may be divided into a few very infrequent major events or into many very frequent minor events. The energy of universe is finite, and since multiplication is accomplished only by division, multiplication is accomplished by division. The more you divide, the more you multiply, the more you get. Interesting. We recognize that quantum mechanics is the operating principle. Therefore, when humanity is presented with the option of across-the-board success for all of us, we are so specialized as that we are unable to recognize this generalized, comprehensively discoverable, and comprehensible course of action to be implemented by this invisible technology of quantum mechanics. History was given an enormous range of resources. Humanity was given an enormous range of resources with which to discover our minds are everything and our muscles are relatively nothing. We note that hydrogen does not have to earn a living before behaving like a hydrogen atoms. Humans, in fact, are the only phenomenon upon which the power structure has been able to impose the everyday obligation of satisfactorily earning a living. He said nature don't earn a living. As we talked about last week in procession, the bee doesn't earn a living. The bee doesn't have to earn the right to be here. This is what Bucky said over and over and over. Humans were born a genius. We're meant to be an incredible success. But we're taught to sell our body, mind, and spirit for a paycheck because they had to earn a living. And he said, you don't have to earn the right to be here. We each are right here with the gift, something valuable to our fellow human beings. But we're taught to specialize and don't make mistakes and get a good job and earn a living. He goes on to say, because of high technology's capability to take care of the needs of everyone on the planet, we now know that the prerequisite of having to earn a living is obsolete. Only by virtue of invisible technology's implementation of a revolution in producing constantly greater performance per unit of invested resources. He's talking, what he says here, we now know that technology allows us to do so much more with so much less. We do have the adequate resources to take care of and sustain everybody at a higher standard of living than has ever before existed on planet Earth. Such a realization will swiftly alter all the fundamental assumptions and activities of our daily lives in a very great way. Bobo? A preponderance of fear has long operated in the academic world amongst professional educators working toward or holding tenuously on to tenure. A great many teachers would gladly become research professors if they were assured by some authority they would be given the income they want. They would much prefer to do their research and writing at home. Such home-conducted research and telecommuting among academics and other workers would save immense quantities of irreplaceable fossil fuel gasoline now used to commute daily to the workplace, especially in the U.S. We must realize that we have all reached a turning point where we can no longer afford to make money rather than make good sense. And this is what he said. You can either make money or you can make sense. They're mutually exclusive. So what he's talking about here is wealth. Wealth, as we know from previous sessions, is the ability to survive blank number of days into the future. And he says we have all these jobs and layers and layers and layers and layers and layers upon layers of bureaucracies in the government and major corporations. We have all these managers managing managers managing managers and supervising supervisors and all these jobs created, but no wealth is being created. There's all this work being done, but there's no wealth being created. It doesn't sustain or continue or add to the people's ability to live longer into the future. So we have millions and millions and hundreds of millions of people around the globe getting in their cars every day. And his cars have all this horsepower under the hood, and we're sitting at all these traffic lights, and all these horses jumping up and down, but the cars are going nowhere. They're sitting and waiting for the light to change so they can go to work that doesn't create any wealth. And then he says he had this geologist friend, Francois de Chardonnay, once calculated each gallon of gasoline produced by nature would cost $1 million at this time, early 1980s, and at energy rates currently charged by utility companies. So if all these people at $1 million a gallon, be cheaper to pay them to stay home. So look what's happening globally. We have people staying at home. Now what about all these people? You think they're going to go back to work? Who is anxious? How many of you watching this, and how many of you know people who are anxious to leave their homes where productivity is still fairly high and jump in their cars and sit on the highways, sitting at traffic lights, wasting all that time, all those resources, all that money, going to jobs, some of which don't even add any value. But let's say they do add great value. Still, the question is, how many of you know people or yourself want to go back, commuting back and forth to work? Not many. So that's all going to change. What about those office buildings they're going to go to? What will happen to them? The world is designed to change. The only constant is change. So this is what he goes on to say. Every child has an enormous drive to demonstrate competence. If humans are not required to earn a living, to be provided survival needs, many are going to want to be productive, but not at those tasks they did not choose to do, or were forced to do, or forced to accept in order to earn money. Instead, humans will spontaneously take upon themselves those tasks that the world society really needs to have done. If humanity realizes this potential in time to exercise this vital option, we shall witness strong competition among individuals to be allowed to serve on humanity's research, development, and production teams. Never again will what one does creatively, productively, and unselfishly be equated with earning a living. People's sense of accomplishment will derive from showing their peers and demonstrating to the great intellectual integrity of the universe, which we speak of as God, that they vastly enjoy doing their best in the unselfish production of services for others, rather than just for the survival needs of themselves and their families. I think humanity has crossed the threshold to enter upon its final examination. It is not the political systems or economical systems, but the individual humans themselves who are in the final examination. How much courage and integrity does each of us have individually to steer a life course according to what our minds have learned through experimental evidence to be the relevant principles governing our situation? How much ingenuity do we have to solve the larger problems of society through anticipatory design rather than outmoded institutions based on misinformation and the maintenance of status quo for the vested interests. I discovered that we have such an option. How much courage does each of us have to take the first active step leading to the exercise of that option? What is it that each of us must do? How much willpower must we gather to cast aside deeply ingrained patterns and prejudices? How far must we go to make consciously considered decisions based on intellectual integrity? How much faith will we have in our ability to recognize that intellectual integrity? Or, by default, will the unconscious crowd-following mass psychology of the Dark Ages reign supreme for another eon? A very large number of Earthians, possibly the majority, sense the increasing imminence of total extinction of humanity by the more than 50,000 poised for delivery atomic bombs. Apparently, no one of the 4.5 billions of people on our planet know what to do about it, including the world's most powerful political leaders. Humans did not invent atoms. Humans discovered atoms, together with some mathematically incisive laws governing their behavior. In 1928, humans first discovered the existence of galaxies other than our own Milky Way. Since then, we've discovered 100 billion more galaxies, each averaging over 100 billion stars. Each star is an all-out chain-reacting atomic energy plant. Humans did not invent gravity, cohering the macrocosm and microcosm of eternally regenerative universe. He says the universe regenerates itself. It's eternally regenerative. It's designed that way. Humans did not invent humans or the boiling and freezing points of water. Humans are 60% water. Humans did not invent the 92 regenerative chemical elements or the planet Earth, with its unique biological life-supporting and protecting conditions. Humans did not invent the radiation received from our atomic energy generator, the sun, around which we designedly orbit at a distance of 93 million miles. The farther away from its source, the less intense the radiation. With all the space of the universe to work with, nature found 93 million miles to be the minimum safe remoteness of biological protoplasm from atomic radiation generators. What he's saying is, at 93 million miles, photosynthesis occurs. Not at 92, not at 94, 93. Of all the space, the billions and billions of miles of space, 93 million, sun and earth, photosynthesis occurs. Humans did not invent the photosynthetic process by which vegetation on our planet can transceive the radiation from the 93 million mile away sun and transform it into the complex hydrocarbon molecules structuring and nurturing all life on planet Earth. Design is both subjective and objective, an exclusively intellectual mathematical conceptioning of the orderliness of interrelationships. All living creatures, including humans, have always been designed to be born unclothed, utterly inexperienced, absolutely ignorant, driven by hunger, thirst, respiration, curiosity, and instincts such as the reproductive urge. All creatures forced to take speculative initiatives or to follow the herd, else they perish. Ecological life designed to learn only by trial and error. Common to all creature experiences, cumulative inventory of only by trial and error developed problem-solving reflexes. It says that's where we get our experiences from. Mistake, correct, trial and error. Unique to human experience is the fact that problem-solving leads only to fresh pastures, but sometimes ever more intellectually challenging problems. So the more problems, the better you get, the bigger the problems you learn to solve. And we've learned to solve some pretty big problems. trial and error, trillions. The humans have had to make trillions of mistakes to acquire the little we have thus far learned. The great mistakes we have made is to assume that the supreme authority governing life and universe is not God, but either luck or the dicta of the humanly constituted and armed, most powerful socioeconomic systems and religion. The combined human power structures, economic, religious, and political, have compounded this primary error by ruling that no one should make mistakes and punishing those who do. This deprives humans of their only by trial and error method of learning. The power structure's forbiddance of error making has fostered cover-ups, self-deceit, egotism, false fronts, hypocrisy, legally enacted or decreed subterfuge, ethical codes, and the economic rewarding of selfishness. Selfishness in turn fosters both individual and national bluffing of vastness of armaments. Thus, we have come to the greatest of problems ever to confront humanity. What can the little individual human do about the supernatural corporate power structures and their seemingly governable capability to corrupt? This is early 1980s. So these numbers are way off. A successful U.S. presidency campaign requires a minimum of $50 million. It's now $1 billion. You want to be president of the U.S.? It's $1 billion. Through big businesses' advertising placement control of the most powerful media money can buy, they have now bought control of the U.S. political systems once designed for democracy. Without God, the little individual can do nothing. Brains of all creatures, including humans, are always not only preoccupied in coordinating the information fed into the brain's imagination. It's scenarioing center, but brains of all creatures, including humans, are always and only preoccupied in coordinating the information fed into the brain's imagination. It's scenarioing center. In other words, the physical senses and the brain remembered previously similar experience patterns in a previous. We learn from our experiences. Trial and error. We see patterns. We put them together. We understand what to do wrong, what to not do going forward, what we did wrong, what not to repeat, what we did right, what to repeat. Human mind alone has been given access to some of the eternal laws governing physical and metaphysical universe, such as the laws of leverage, mechanical advantage, mathematics, chemistry, and electricity, as well as the laws governing gravitational or magnetic interattractiveness, as manifest by the progressive terminal acceleration of earthward traveling bodies on their final snap together of two inter-approaching magnets. In other words, he's saying we've discovered the principles governing universe. Employing those principles first in weaponry and subsequently in livingry, humans have been able to illumine the nights with electricity and to intercommunicate with telephones and to integrate the daily lives of the remotest from one another humans with the airplane. As a consequence of human minds solving problem with technology, within only the last 3/4 of a century of our multi-millions of years presence on planet Earth, the technical design initiatives have succeeded in advancing the standard of living of the majority of humanity to a level unknown or undreamed of by any pre-20th century potentates. So once again, he's saying our mind-solving ability combined with technology that was initially used to design weapons to kill more people at greater distances and less time than ever before, which we've done, has now been converted to livingry, which raised the standard of living for all humans on planet to a level no one had dreamed of or even imagined before the 20th century. Within only the last century, humanity has grown from 95% illiterate to 65% literate. Preponderantly literate humanity is capable of self-instruction and self-determination in major degree. I'm going to do that again. Within the last century, humanity has grown from 95% illiterate to 65% literate. Preponderantly literate humanity is capable of self-instruction and self-determination in major degrees. We don't need to send all the kids back to school in order to learn. There's other reasons to go, but what he's saying here, we have the ability to teach ourselves whatever we want to learn, and the internet makes it so, and everybody knows that. This phrase, I don't know, is totally, completely obsolete. You can't say that anymore. When you say I don't know, it means I'm too lazy to go Google it. Clearly, humanity is being evolutionary. Please listen. Clearly, humanity is being evolutionarily ejected ever more swiftly from the yesteryear's womb of designedly permitted ignorance. The present evolutionary crisis of humans on planet Earth is that in their final examination for continuance in universe. It is not an examination of political, economic, or religious systems, but of the integrity of each and all individuals, humans' responsible thinking and unselfish response to the acceleration and evolution ever more unprecedented events. The final examination, we're in it. It's not examination of our political systems, our economic systems, or religious systems. And that's what Bucky said. If we're going to make it, we got to get rid of politicians and religious leaders. I'm surprised he died a natural death, actually, because very dangerous things to say. But it depends on the integrity of each of us and our individual responsible thinking and unselfish response to all these unprecedented events. How do we respond as individuals to each other? In spite of all what we see in the media, on the news, on the television, is it conquer to divide and divide keep conquered? Or to conquer keep divided? Is there power structure that doesn't want us to get along? Because I think left to our own devices, we get along quite well. In general, the higher standard of living, the lower the birth rate. The population stabilizing higher living standards will be accomplished through conversion of all the high technology now employed in weaponry production being redirected into living reproduction, blocked only by political party traditions and individually uncoped with, absolutely conditioned reflexes. So what he's saying here, again, the better the technology, the higher the standard of living, the lower the birth rates. Because in this, you get the country with high birth rates, they have a lot of children because they know that a lot of them are not going to make it. So they have to have several to keep the species going. Once you have technology and the standard of living goes up, you don't need as many children to take, because not as many die. The birth rates decline because death rates decline and higher standards of living. So the weaponry production needs to be directed to living rate, but that doesn't happen in political party traditions. A few instances of persistent, misinformedly conditioned reflexes are the failure popularly to recognize the now scientifically proven fact that there are no different races or classes of humans. Here's an example. A few instances of persistent, misinformed, conditioned reflexes. One is the failure to recognize the now scientifically proven fact there are no different races or classes of humans. The failure to recognize technological obsolescence of the world around politically assumed Malthus Darwin assumption of inherent inadequacy of life support. So what he was talking about, Malthusian economics, there's not enough life support for all of us. Darwin, survival of the fittest. He says the other one is the failure to ratify the ERA, the Equal Rights for Women Amendment. The failure to do that. These are one of the instances of the misinformedly conditioned reflexes. And by the thus far in history most crossbred world's people democracy in the USA, or with ample food production on earth for all humans, on the tolerating of marketing systems which result in millions of humans dying of starvation every year. These are some of the instances of persistent, misinformed, conditioned reflexes and the failure to recognize them. These are the facts. There's no different races or classes. There's no such thing as scarcity. We have ample food production for everyone. I showed you this last week. The industry that's gone down. In the 1800s, 98% of the population was in food production. Today it's less than 2%. That 2% can produce over 100% of the world's food needs. But they're not in a free enterprise. They're subsidized by the government. So we pay them not to grow while millions of people starve. Carelessly unchallenged persistence of a myriad of such information, brain reflexing of the masses, will signal a lack of such lack of people's integrity as to call, I'm going to do that again. Please listen. Carelessly unchallenged persistence of a myriad of such misinformed brain reflexes of the masses will signal such lack of people's integrity as to call for the disqualification of humanity and its elimination by atomic holocaust. You may feel helpless about stopping the bomb. So what he's talking about is the elimination of all, because someone's going to blow the atomic bomb and we're going to kill each other either in the name of God or because we think there's not enough to support us all. Still thinking it's you or me world. To you, the connection between the Equal Rights Amendment and the atomic holocaust may at first seem remote. I am confident, he writes, that what I am saying is true. The Holocaust can be prevented only by individual humans demonstrating uncompromising integrity in all matters, thus qualifying us for continuance in a semi-divine designing initiative bestowed upon us by the gift of our mind. He said, you're going to follow the mind or you're going to follow the crowd. The problem with following the crowd is the crowd's usually wrong. So I'll end with this. He says, the best antidote to the powerfully misintentioned sensing and acting reflexes of society is the study of synergetics. The data of synergetics, as presented in the 2 volumes of Synergetics and Background Data in Critical Path, are adequate to the task of breaking the Dark Ages stranglehold on the human individual. The data of synergetics, as presented in the he wrote 2 books called Synergetics 1 and 2. And the background data in Critical Path, part of which we studied before. The data in those 3 books are adequate to the task of breaking the Dark Ages stranglehold on the human individual. This book has undertaken to present some of the principal synergetic concepts in a logical sequence. It does not treat the successively acquired realizations and the detailed degree of synergetics, the defining reference on the subject. So he says we kind of skim it in cosmography, but synergetics is where you get into the data, the detail. As a guidebook to synergetics, in the context of its historic roots, this volume has added new sites and primary concepts to the subject, including some that have accrued since its early expositions. In other words, he's saying, these are some highlights, were PowerPoints, but the data, the detail is in synergetics. excuse me. Study of synergetics with continued recommitment of human individuals to utter faith in the comprehensive wisdom and absolute power of the individual. I'm going to do that again. Study of synergetics with continued recommitment of human individuals to utter faith in the comprehensive wisdom and absolute power of the intellectual integrity and love governing an eternally regenerative universe may bring about our escape from the dark ages, race, suicidal obsession with the misconception that cosmic supremacy is vested in little planet Earth's politicians, priests, generals, and money power wielders. I'm going to read that again, and then I'm going to sign off. Study of synergetics with continued recommitment of human individuals to utter faith in the comprehensive wisdom and absolute power of the intellectual integrity and love governing an eternally regenerative universe may bring about our ultimate escape from the dark ages, race, suicidal obsession with the misconception that cosmic supremacy is vested in little planet Earth's politicians, priests, generals, and money power wielders. Dear reader, traditional human power structures and their reign of darkness are about to be rendered obsolete. So we are in the final examination. We have an election coming up. I'll end the way I started. A lot to think about. Thank you for your time. I hope you'll consider these thoughts. Pick up the book, maybe read it yourself, study it with your family or friends. I think the most important thing is to think clearly and think for yourself. And not be intimidated. And not be cowed. But have the courage to speak. And have the courage to speak the truth. That's it for today. Thank you for joining Wednesdays with Wayne. I'm Wayne. This is Wednesday. I'm signing off. Let's go out and make it a better world. I'll see you next Wednesday. Bye.